Okay, thank you all for being here for the Hearings Committee meeting on the 20th of September. I'll open the meeting with our karakia tinitanga. Mai iti pai moanga araro ki te tai, mai ite awa tonga araro ki te awa raki. Tene e tahapuri, awhi ai e taratahi. Whano, whano, haere mai te toki. Hui e, taiku. So apologies. We have one apology from His Worship the Mayor Ron Mark, and we have a full
Grace.
So Grace isn't on the committee. Yeah. So apart from Ron, we have a full contingent of committee, and welcome to our fellow elected members. Moving on to item 3 of the agenda are our conflicts of interest declaration. Do any of the committee have any conflicts of interest?
Well, I guess I have one connection with Mount Holdsworth Road.
You put a submission in.
Yeah. I'm a resident there.
Yeah. Okay, so just record that. I'm happy to do. Anyone to second that? Brian, thank you. Those in favour? Item 5 on the agenda, actually item 4, sorry, is public forum. We don't have anyone scheduled for public forum today, but I would like to acknowledge those who came and spoke at our hearings meeting to their submissions earlier in the month. So I just record that, thank you. And then we'll move on to confirmation of minutes from our meeting on the 5th of September. Do I have anyone that can move the minutes? The recommendation is that the minutes of the Hearings Committee meeting held on the 5th of September are true and correct.
I can move that, I think.
Thank you, Steve. And seconded.
I can second it.
Thank you, Brian. All in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Next item on the agenda is item 6.1, which is the confirmation of the Hearings Committee deliberation meeting on the 22nd of August. And as a reminder, this was in relation to the Freedom Camping Bylaw, the revocation of the reserve status of Belvedere Road, Belvedere Hall, and disposal of 29 Holloway Street. The recommendation in front of us is that we confirm the minutes of the Hearings Committee deliberation meeting held on the 22nd of August. I'm happy to move that.
I can second that.
Thank you, Steve. All in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. Right, now we move on to the deliberation 6.2 on our reports on the Carterton District Speed Management Plan. And I'd also like to thank Johannes for driving elected members round so we could discuss and see the roads that are included in the report. And over to you.
Thank you, Chair. And so I'm going to take the report as read and just highlight what I tried to achieve through the report. So we had great submissions, and but within that there was very specific comments. What we've tried to do is to find a balance between all the comments and things that was highlighted, and try to make revisions to the proposed speed management plan. And that's what you would find in the report. And with that, I would hand it back to you, Robin.
Thank you. Okay, so as per standard meeting protocol, we can open up for questions. Any questions for Johannes on the report in front of us?
Can I just make a comment?
We'll do questions first,
Okay.
and then we can do comments second. Does anyone have any questions? So Lou and Steve and Dale, you're also welcome to ask any questions if you do have any.
Probably just around number 12 to Footy Road between Gladstone and Poor Road. The recommendations, just talk me through that, starting from the intersection.
So the recommendation so I'll start with the original plan. So the original plan was to have it at 60 kilometers an hour from the Gladstone intersection all the way down to Whiteworth or to Faro Road.
That's right, yeah.
So after listening to or reviewing the submissions and then the oral hearings, we decided to take it up to 80 kilometers an hour from the Gladstone Road intersection.
Yep.
And then at that route position 847 is where there's a significant change in environment, and that's the bend just before you get into that school zone. So we're proposing to drop it to 60 kilometers an hour in the area in front of the school, with then a VSL or variable speed limit for when the school is in session or when the school is dropping off and picking up. So that area around the school will be 60, and then after Brooklyn Road, it goes back to 80 all the way to the bridge, where we have the various intersections with Admiral Road to Faro Road. We've got the cemetery and then the bridge. So as you approach the bridge, it'll go down to 80 where there's this change in environment.
Thank you.
Makes sense?
And from that intersection back to Huranui Orangi?
That would be at 80 kilometers an hour as per the technical report. So that whole from the intersection all the way to Huranui Orangi would be 80 kilometers an hour. However, at the marae there would be a VSL, variable speed limit, so that when there's any events that it can be activated for a reduced speed limit.
Yeah, I just wondered if can't remember now exactly, but did we talk about the bridge and the pub?
Yes, so that covers that whole stretch. So as you approach the marae, the next big thing is the bridge, and then you have the Gladstone pub, the sport complex, the rifle range, and then you've got a few corners as you approach the intersection with Te Whiti and Long.
That's all 80.
That would all coming down to 80 kilometers an hour.
Thank you.
And then where you turn left to Te Whiti Road, then that's
And then
still 80,
can
and then
park.
60 around that school zone, as you mentioned.
And turning right to Longbush is unchanged.
Thank you.
Any other, is that answered?
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Brian and then Steve.
It's, Johannes, Belvedere Road, and I know we did talk about it yesterday. The recommendations, Connolly's line to Manning's Road at 80 kilometres per hour. I'm just wondering whether we should not be including the 50k to go over the bridge just and then change on the western side of the bridge to include that last bend and that narrow bridge. So just wondering if you can tell us the reasoning and the recommendation for what we've got.
Firstly, I would not be opposed to take that recommendation on board. We've been, if you were to consider changing all the speed limits to all the roads as being what we would have proposed to do, we've been very conservative in what we've proposed. So any further reduction would be more in line with what we would have proposed if we didn't have to consult. So extending the 50 kilometers to before the bridge is easy to do.
My thoughts, my reasoning for asking is there's at least 6 houses between Connolly's line and the bridge, and a couple of entrances fairly close after the bridge. So my thoughts would be to include that 50k to the other side of the bridge to encompass those entrances.
Narrow road.
And the narrow bridge and the bend in the road.
I'm happy with that.
So I've made a note as well, so when we come to recommendations, can sort of discuss that and then vote against for that or against it or whichever way. Steve?
Thanks. Johannes, I just had this question, just taking into consideration what Brian's just said around houses in, say, the between the bridge and so forth, Connolly's Line, 5 houses, and lowering that down to 50. I just think about the State Highway to Chester Road and the properties and so forth, and the access into the showgrounds, and I struggle to understand why that's still at 80 and it's not lower down to 60, just for that first section to where it goes past the cemetery and then breaks out into more
Chester Road.
Chester Road.
So so just to, are you referring to from State Highway up until the cemetery, or say the AMP show?
From
from State Highway 2, from the highway up until the cemetery, where it does break out into proper rural, where there's
Beyond
the houses are sparse.
Yeah, so maybe in terms of, so when we considered the feedback, there was strong opposition against Chester Road, Waltons Road, Norfolk Road, that cluster. We looked at a conservative measure of at least reducing the speed from that exact area from the cemetery all the way to State Highway 2. It makes total sense to take it down to 60 kilometers an hour. Maybe another consideration is to have 60 kilometers up until the railway, and then 80 to the cemetery, and then back to 100. The reason some of the comments in support of their opposition refer to the width of the road, and that it would be painful to drive it even at 80 kilometers an hour, because our original proposal was to have it just at 80 kilometers, and that was
All the way up.
yeah, and that was all the way out. So for me, it's really up to the committee. We could justify, like, from an engineering point of view, lower speeds are safer, and if the committee wants to bring it further down, then it makes my job easier.
So I was just thinking, past to the western side of the cemetery, if I can put it that way. Just thinking about the hill that you climb up before you drive into the golf course, and you have a lot of people coming out of that golf course on certain days. So you've got 80 kilometres an hour coming up that hill, and even with the amount of people that attend at the Urapa, with cars parked along the sides of the roads on both sides. I was just curious as to why the committee made that decision to stick with 80, but that.
So this is only a recommendation
Yeah.
for us for committee to.
It was based on submissions, there was a lot of opposition to lowering it from the 100.
Yeah. So and just to we're trying to find a middle ground between the safe and appropriate speed guidelines and what could go down with what can be accepted by the community. So just trying to find that middle ground as well.
I'm just comparing it, like Brian just raised the point about extending Belvedere. I look at Chester Road no differently. I look at Park Road no differently. You're extending it out. To me, there's a similar amount of properties you're talking about in that section. The other question I had was around Hughes Line, and you've decided to leave Hughes Line, well, drop it down to 80.
Yes.
Did the committee have a consideration to drop it down to 70 just the fact that the residents living on that road were happy with it being around 70 to 80, for the fact that people may still use it instead of State Highway 2 because it's at the same speed as State Highway 2.
So I did explain when we were driving, I did explain this to the committee members. The new terraces for speed limits is 40, 60, 80. We don't have 50, 70, 100 anymore. So when because we're not doing a blanket change to everything and trying to retain some level of consistency in the clusters where we are making changes, that's why the recommendation is to go to 60 to 80 kilometers an hour. My original recommendation was at 60 kilometers an hour, and there was strong opposition against. So a lot of the comments, the feedback suggested either 70 or 80. 80 being the new normal going forward. That's why we'd go there.
Yeah, thinking forward, I look forward to it. Well, I shouldn't say I look forward to in the future. The community living on that road, the feedback, if they do end up getting that traffic back using that road, they may have wished that they'd chosen 60.
So just a reminder as well, Johannes mentioned it to us yesterday when we were going out. So today's meeting, we will make recommendations from this committee, which will then go to council, and then council will either adopt or change those recommendations. And then the next step is to take it to
the Director of Land Transport.
Yeah.
And they can also make revisions and adjustments to it, and then we bring it back. So it's quite a process.
So it's not a whatever we decide now. So there's still more processes to go through. But thank you for raising Chester Road, because that was going to be my question, was around certainly from State Highway 2 to at least the railway line of 60, because then that would match what is proposed for Norfolk Road up to the railway line and then 60. But when we drove it yesterday, just thinking about the cemetery and the golf course as well, they kind of made me think a little bit more about extending. Any other questions? And if not, we can go to any questions or comments.
When we were having seen all the submissions and then heard the oral submissions, I was terrified about this meeting because I had no idea how we were going to sort through it all. So I would just like to thank Johannes and his team for having done that in a way which I think is understandable, and the recommendations which are by and large likely to be acceptable, I think, to the public, because it looks like we have listened.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Steve. Awesome. So are there,
Can I ask a quick question?
yeah, absolutely.
How does the variable speed limit work, say with the marae? Can they control that from the marae, or do they have to come and talk to you guys, or how does it work?
You can work through the details. Some of it can be set automatically. Some of it can be. We haven't done that yet. My thinking is that we will bring that through the corridor access team, so that when a speed limit is introduced, that at least the corridor team are aware of it. So with the schools, it's relatively easy because it will be set, it will be communicated. But I don't think we'll let them just do it. We'll have some level of understanding that we're aware of when they do set a speed limit.
Okay.
So as in, when a certain sign is out, that triggers the variable speed.
So, yeah, so the mechanism would be we'll try as enlarge to use the electronic VSL so that we can turn it on and off, so it's very visible. Just the normal hardware, people get numb to it and don't pay attention. So yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a comment as well. I'm just most appreciative of the work that's gone into us and the decisions that have been made. I think the inclusion of gravel, lowering the speed on the gravel is fantastic, even though I think the majority of submissions from memory were against lowering the speed on the gravel. I think that's a great decision to put that in there. So well done to all.
Brian?
There's one other, got a question mark under the priority 4 roads, identified by the community, and whilst I agree with all these, there's no considerations tabled here for any of these roads that are up here, like Mataroa and Millers. And I know that we have all driven them and talked about them. Have you got any general comment, Johannes, you want to talk about there?
If I refer to, I'll refer to the part of the consultation, we had the interim speed management plan, and that mentioned our principles for setting safe and appropriate speeds, and all of these roads were listed in future roads to be considered. We didn't go into the same level of detail as in the technical report with everything that we've proposed, but the request from the community really aligns with the principles within the interim speed management plan. And it also, if we were to make a recommendation in this, with this revision, the principles would have been exactly the same. In terms of, if we go through them individually, if I just have a quick run through them, Mataroa Road is a very narrow road. The road, there's areas of high density in terms of residents, but then there's also the interaction between the larger heavy vehicles and just normal passenger vehicles. The road of the width does not allow for two cars to pass each other at 100 kilometers an hour as it currently sits. So going down to the safest appropriate speed of 60 kilometers an hour, that would be ideal. However, there's large sections of the road that's very straight and actually has reasonable width. So I believe 80 kilometer an hour will bring a level of consistency, but also kind of avoid some frustration from road users as well. Miller's Road, also relatively narrow. A lot of bends on the road where even at 80 kilometers an hour, you find it hard to travel at speed. There's also the interaction with heavy agricultural vehicles and passenger cars. Then you've got the increase in population density in that area. So again, the 80 kilometers an hour will make it substantially safer for the residents or the road users there. Mount Holdsworth, Waini Gorge, and Hoeki Road is very much alike in terms of the corridor. There's a lot of bends. It's not that wide, and then you can hardly travel at 80 kilometers an hour on those roads as it is. Waini Gorge and Mount Holdsworth Road also attracts a lot of visitors. We were fortunate enough to travel behind a visitor yesterday, and they struggled to get over 60 kilometers an hour on Chester Road. So, and the challenge is not, so is not for that person driving to the conditions and the experienced driver driving to the conditions. It's when those two meet on the road where it's a significant risk. So that answer the
It
question?
does. Yeah,
Yep.
thanks for explaining that.
Any other comments? Questions anyone's forgotten?
Just confirming, these don't apply to motorcyclists.
I can either confirm.
I think there was something hidden in the report, Dale, that deputy mayors on motorcycles have to be less than 20 under what's recommended.
Yamahas don't go that fast anyway.
Someone with a walking up red flag, is it?
Right, okay, so if there are no other discussion items to discuss, then I propose that we move to number 4 on our report, which is on page 20, where the recommendations are. And we will move to the first recommendation, that the committee receives the report. Do I have someone to move that, please?
I can do that.
Thank you, Steve. I'll second that. In favour?
Aye.
Carried. Our second recommendation is endorsing priority 1, which is reducing speed limits around schools and early childhood education centres. And this is on page 15 of the report, where we have the proposed approach. Do I have anyone to move the recommendation?
I will.
Thank you, Brian. I'll second that. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. So item 3 to recommend is endorses priority 2, reducing speed limits around Marae. That's for the report. I'm happy to move that recommendation.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Steve. All in favour?
Aye.
Carried, thank you. Now, item 4, sorry, priority 3. What I'm proposing, because there are several recommendations, whilst it's one recommendation, I'd just like us to go through each of them, and sort of tick off that we are happy with the recommendations. So the first one is Carter's Line, which in the recommendation is no changes to the existing speed limits. So unless there are any alterations on the committee for that. The second one is Park Road. So the recommendation on and Richmond Road is and Hilton Road. And the recommendation, which is as per the original proposal and the technical report, is for 50 kilometres. Is the committee comfortable with that? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Park Road between Rutland Road and Carter's Line, Moreton Road between Rutland and Carter's Line, Johnson's Road, Waitangi Road and Bailey's Road. The recommendations, again, as per original proposal in the technical report, is Park and Moreton Roads for those points, 80 kilometres, and then Johnson's, Waitangi and Baylis at 60. Is the committee happy with?
Yeah.
Number 4 is Rutland Road, and the recommendation again, as per the original proposal, is at 60 kilometres.
Yeah.
The only comment is, I mean, we've reduced it to 50 and people are happy with that. But from what Joanna said yesterday and before, we can't do 50. We can either have 40 or 60, is that?
We shouldn't have 50. We can. We're trying to work towards a long-term consistency across the networks.
Yeah. That brings us to Chester Road, Chester Park Drive, Parkers Road and Wiltons Road. So the recommendation is Chester Road from Norfolk to RP 1.6 kilometres from State Highway 2 is so no change, so that will still remain at the 100 kilometres. Wiltons Road, Parkers Road, Chester Park Drive, again, no change to the speed limit. And then the next item is the change. So at the moment, the proposal is from Chester Road from State Highway 2 to RP 1.6 kilometres at 80 kilometres per hour.
So just for clarity, road position 1.6 kilometres is the bend just before the cemetery. On the northern, on the northern side of the cemetery.
Just before the cemetery coming south. So.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is the one that Steve did raise a question on, which is one I had a question. I was originally going to suggest that we ask if we could recommend that would be 60 kilometres from State Highway to the railway line.
So what is that RP?
Of the railway line. I can, I can.
Hang on. I
About
can measure.
0.8 or something.
I can
I mean, if you're referring to RPs, then presumably if you're going to change the recommendation, it would.
But I hadn't finished, sorry. So I originally was going to say to the railway line, which would encompass the houses on the left-hand side and obviously the AMP showgrounds. But having listened to Steve's consideration of the extended development over the railway line, sort of up towards the golf course, and then obviously with the cemetery and parking on the road, I'm suggesting to the committee extending 60 kilometres from State Highway to just past the cemetery, which would be road position 1.6 kilometres. Comments?
Again, my original thought was it would be good at 70, but if we can have 60 or 80, it better be 60.
So would you be happy with that? If we can alter that, Brian? Or
Yeah, whilst I'm happy, I'm happy to alter it to 60, but I'm just wondering with that transition from 100, which is just north of this cemetery, and then have a transition of 80 to 60 is
Just maybe on that, when we do go from, you can't go from 100 to 60, so there
Yeah.
would be,
a transition.
there would be I think it's a 200-meter transition from 80, so that's just a practical measurable that will be included.
So that transition will be there.
Yes. So once we go through the finer details, we'll bring that in.
and so a reminder that any of these recommendations will be going up to the full council. So our recommendations as a committee may change when the full council.
So that 200 metres from the cemetery is going to be sort of down the bottom of that hill, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
571 metres from the state highway to the other side of the railway line.
So are we all clear? So just talk me through it again.
So the way I see it, starting from the northern end of the cemetery, we will be dropping from 100 kilometres an hour for a transition area to 80 for 200 metres.
Yep. So that will be probably at 1.8 kilometers.
Yeah, and then down to 60. So the 60 will basically be probably around about that bend or
Around the bend.
around the bend before the railway line.
No,
Going the other way.
No, the other way.
Out to 1.8,
Yeah.
take up that 200 metres.
So what they're suggesting is 60
Oh.
kilometers from State Highway all the way to the cemetery,
Yeah.
Yeah.
meaning that we need a buffer from the other. From
The other side.
The other side
coming
of the
in.
cemetery.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the recommendation where we have here Chester Road from State Highway 2 to road position 1.6 kilometres, which is the recommendation is 60. I'm proposing that goes to, sorry, is 80. I'm proposing that goes to 60. And then there would be a natural progression of a 200 metre buffer of 80 before it kicks into the 100
Okay,
kilometre.
I'm with you.
So we all in agreement on that? Great. Then we have number 6, which is the Norfolk Road between State Highway 2, Chester Road, David Lowe's Lane, Wainawa Road, Mangahau Road and Jordan Road. So the recommendations that are listed here, are the committee happy with maintaining these recommendations? This is on page 17. Are there any amendments that the committee would like to make here?
No.
And no, we can't have 70.
No, we can't have 70, which disappoints me. I do think the fewer different speed limits we have, the better, because it avoids confusing people. So my thought was we would have one speed limit from the state highway from the new roundabout up to the point where it became 100. But what you're saying is we'd have a 200 metre buffer anyway, which pretty much covers the bit from the railway line to where it will change. So fine by me.
The disappointing thing is you didn't have to have that when you went from 100 to 70. So you asking for 70, Steve, is very relevant.
So the step was from 100 to 70. So now it's changing. So in order to get to 60, that's a 40 kilometer, that's quite a difference.
Yeah, I get it.
He's just teasing. So we're happy with these? Okay, the next one under priority 3 is the Norman Ave, Ahumahi Road and Pakihi Road. And the recommendations there are as per the original proposal in the technical report. We're all comfortable with those. And again, Hughes Line, Cornwall Road, East Taratahi, between State Highway 10, Hughes Line, the recommendation here is the 80 kilometres and the original proposal was 60 kilometres, and just reminding that the 80 kilometres is due to submissions and oral submissions that we had. Are we happy with that?
Happy.
Jermaine? Great. Dalefield Road. So the recommendations here for Dalefield Road are as per the original proposal. Still comfortable with those? Taken as yes. Okay, Belvedere Road. So was mentioned around the table in our questions and discussions was to extend the 50 kilometres to the other side, or along Belvedere Road to the other side of the bridge. And then from that point, 80 kilometres up to Mannings Road.
So why isn't that 40 or 60? Why is that?
I was thinking that at the previous one with Lincoln, with Dalefield Road. How come that's 50?
I'm making you earn your wages today here.
Oh, I'm trying. We're trying to get to a level of consistency without the ability to do a blanket change where consistency is easy. Now, Belvedere Road forms part of the urban cluster that is left unchanged at 50. So we didn't. I mean, we could change the urban settings to 40 kilometres if you like. That would be consistent. We can just go throughout.
Don't be like that.
You asked.
You asked.
Exactly.
I didn't ask, I'll just back you up.
So it's all about being consistent, Dale,
Right.
which means that on your motorbike, you will have to adhere to 50.
But the posted speed limit will be 50. What Dale adheres to is completely different.
The merit points.
So committee, are we happy to extend that 50 kilometres, and just noting as well that the community request was to extend the speed reduction beyond the bridge also. There was a lot of concern around the speed limit there. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
You're happy? Oh, good.
So that'll be 50 kilometres to Mannings.
No, so to the other side of the bridge, and then from the other side of the bridge to Mannings will be 80,
Okay.
and then it will be what it is currently. The next one was Lincoln Road. So this is 185 metres southwest of Victoria Street and Dalefield Road, and also Taverner Street. And as per the proposal in the technical report, the recommendation is 50 kilometres. Is everyone comfortable?
Is that 50 to continue down from Belvedere Road to keep it one?
All the way to Dalefield Road.
So there's no 60.
No. So again, trying to mirror the urban speed. So if you think, so we look at these changes in clusters. So in terms of Lincoln Road, we think of Dalefield Road coming in. So Dalefield will be at 50. You'd have that consistency from Taverner, that first section of Lincoln Road. So having less variation in speed.
Just be a slow bypass now.
Yeah. Doesn't apply to councillors.
So, and the other thing too, during the hearings and submissions, there was a lot of concern around that area. You know, there are a lot more
lot more walkers and a lot more foot traffic.
It's urban street now,
Yeah.
as opposed to
A lot more development
Yeah.
that's occurring on that road.
And more to come.
We need,
No room for footpath or anything.
well, we need,
Road is narrow like that.
We're all comfortable with that. Te Whiti Road.
Madam Chair, I've just had a comms from His Worship to say that he won't get back today, but one of the things that he just wants us to be aware of is just in terms, Te Whiti Road, particularly in terms of our neighbours, north and south, and what they're doing with their roads, so that our speeds as people cross the boundary, we're relatively consistent, or at least aware of somebody travelling from Masterton to Featherston, to Martinborough, for example. Do you know what's happening?
Yes, so there's quite a significant change in environment from the bridge to the Gladstone intersection. So we're also not proposing any change to Longbush further south.
Yeah, so that's 100K
So
from.
that will remain 100K. So when we go into that windy bit with the school and close high density residents, we've got go down to 80, 60 and the variable speed. And then we get to the bridge. Now, I've been in contact with Masterton District Council. They don't see an issue with us changing it from 80 there, because that's all, again, a very significant change in environment, with the rest of just the Whiti Road basically dead straight on that section.
Are 100 over their boundary.
Yes.
And Featherston is 100, or ours is 100 down to the Featherston boundary. Sorry,
Martinborough.
I beg your pardon,
Yes.
boundary. So, okay,
So the Te Whiti Road is looking at, as Johannes has said, particularly the school. There's a lot more residential lifestyle block development in that road, plus there's a few sort of dangerous curves, and where the War Memorial is too.
yeah, so our reduction is not inconsistent with roads north and south of that particular pinch point.
No, it's similar to when you have a change in environment. If even if that was our road, we wouldn't necessarily drop it to 80 because of that environment. It's very similar to the likes of Kokotau and Ponatai Road. So I reckon the consistency is sufficient there.
Thank you.
Because there is the bend just kind of over the bridge that people talked about, fatalities.
And then
Part of
the bridge, so the bridge creates the feeling of restriction, and that typically slows people down. So you have that happening naturally as well.
Thank you.
So the committee is happy with the proposed recommendations as listed here for the Te Whiti, etc. roads. Any changes?
Well, just no changes, but just backing up something that, or repeating really, something that Johanna said yesterday about Brooklands Road, and I can't even pronounce that, but why right? There was, when people submitted, they were inclined to say, well, what are you worrying about? Those are effectively driveways. The point Johannes made is that they may look like driveways, and one of them's actually got a gate across it, but they are in fact our roads. So if we don't do anything, then that'd be 100.
And they need to be special to drive at 100 kilometers an hour in such a short stretch before they get to Te Whiti.
So a special kind of an accelerator.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so with that in mind and all the discussions we've had, and Johannes, you've made note of those recent changes. Do I have to move that we endorse priority 3 as per the revision in the report and the others that we have just made?
Okay.
Thank you, Brian.
Second.
Thank you, Steve. All in favour?
Aye.
Carried. The next is the priority 4, which these are roads identified by the community. So that's on the table at the top of page 20. So the speed limits that we are looking at are the ones that are in the right-hand column saying proposed. Do I have anybody Well, I'm happy to move that we accept these. Thank you, Brian. In favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Item 6 is endorses priority 5, which is reducing gravel roads to 80 kilometres per hour. Would you like to move that?
I'm happy to move that.
Yes, I'm happy to second that. All in favour?
Aye.
Carried. And our last item, recommendation, is recommendation number 7. Notes the recommendation from the Hearings Committee will be presented to the 25th of October council meeting for decision. I shall move that.
Second it.
Thank you, Brian. Favour?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. And thank you for all your work. And as I said before, for driving us around and explaining decisions and for putting all the work in from the hearing submissions and the previous reports that we've had. So really appreciate it. Thank
My
you
pleasure.
very
Thank you.
much. And there being nothing else on the agenda, I shall close with our karakia. Kia tau ki a tātou katoa te atawhai o tō tātou ariki. A ihu kara iti me tu aroha o te atua i te whiwhi nā tahitanga ki te waroa tapu aki, aki, aki. Thank you. I declare the meeting closed.
Outstanding.